Sveicināti, cienījamie skatītāji! Jūsu ekrānos raidījums Kāpēc un es, Alinu Lastovsku. Projekta Baltica aizvien raisa plašas diskusijas par finansējumu un arī par iespējamo izmaksu samazinājumu. Arī Baltijas valstu kopu uzņēmums Intervija gaida Latvijas līdzfinansējumu, un šis jautājums raisīs diezgan asas debatas un spilgtus apzīmējumus, piemēram, no mūsu premjeras par šantāžu. Ko par to saka Intervija vadītājs Marko Kivilu, par to plašāk raidījumā. Good afternoon, Mr. Kivilu.
Good afternoon.
So this conversation takes place on Tuesday evening, but it will be broadcasted on Friday, so we'll have time to translate it. And I would like to start with this recent news about Latvia's co-funding for Intervija. So 9 million euro. Today was a government discussion about this topic. There are a decision about 3.3 million euros. So you are still waiting for another part, like more than 5 million euro to be decided on.
I guess that would be correct if this is a decision now made by the Latvian government regarding that 3.2. So this is fairly fresh. So I would guess that the Latvian government then proceeded as they have indicated before, that they would decide Intervija's co-funding needs in, two distinct phases. One phase being the one that they decided right now, with another phase then being decided later. And if I'm not mistaken, up until maybe the end of March was the timeline when they wanted to decide the other part of Intervija financing.
So does that deadline by supervisory board 20th February, it's just for the first part?
First of all, I think the discussion about deadlines by the supervisory board has been very dramatic in Latvian media. So the way how it goes is that from the management and corporative management side of Intervija, we just need to take into account when we approve a company budget for that given year, is the money really allocated or not within state funding. So just to comment on the question of deadlines, which has been raised previously in Latvian media, what happened in the past was that we needed to make sure that although Intervija's budget was approved by Intervija's supervisory board by the end of December, that within January we got actual confirmation from the Latvian beneficiary that they also agree on these budget needs. Now this full confirmation we didn't get, is still going on, right? Because we got today now, it seems, partial confirmation only, but no rejection of the entire budget alliance.
But this partial thing is fine for you now, for now?
I mean, I would not describe fine, because we still thought the way we compiled the budget means that we need about 9 million euros of co-funding from the Latvian state side.
And what is deadline, or there is no such a thing like deadline?
Yes, so regarding deadlines, as I was trying to explain, it's just a part of corporate management that we have decided with the supervisory board to still continue based on our Intervija budget for 2025, as if financing would be granted, and this decision still stands. So when it comes to January's and February's expenses, and therefore also March expenses, we will just continue with the existing budget without postponing any activities. That's a decision that has been made in light of the necessities of the project, and it's kind of prudent management. Although we will then, of course, wait if there is a change indicated by the Latvian government to our budget. If there is a change in March, we have ample time to review our budget and curve the costs within the remaining part of the year so as to fit within the envelope granted by the Latvian government.
Does this funding situation, in your opinion, make Latvia a reliable partner?
I would say that what has happened is, of course, an issue of communication within the year of 2024. I do believe personally that all of these discussions about what should be inside Intervija's budget should have been preferably held within 2024, so that we wouldn't be in this interim situation that I just described, with us going with an interim budget. That is true. But about reliability, I would say it like this, that it's only natural that the government would seek to curb public expenditure wherever they can. That's normal for a government. It's just the question that the timing is now in 2025. It's kind of late because we are already in 2025 with our corporate budget of 2025. So I guess this all brings this drama of deadlines and all of that. If this conversation would have happened in 2024, I think there wouldn't be any debate even inside the Latvian media.
But this communication issue or problem, it is government responsibility or RB Rail responsibility?
From RB Rail's point of view, we did inform the Ministry of Transport, with whom we communicate because we respond to the Ministry of Transport in Latvia, our budget needs in 2024. But the question, of course, is then just the administrative procedure of budgeting for 2025 in Latvian government.
2024 and what month?
In 2024, I think the first indication we gave was already in February, which is something that we do as part of our governance procedures, because the state budgeting needs for all the three countries just predict that they need for the next year's budget indication in February, and then the ministries start to align their budget needs, and in summer they debate amongst other ministries, then in autumn there's debate in parliament about the state budget, etc. So that's the reason for February.
Have Lithuania or Estonia faced similar issues with funding delay?
I think it's a different situation in Estonia and Lithuania when it comes to the funding, let's say the system of RB Rail as such. So in the past in Latvia, RB Rail has always been funded kind of within that same year, because the funding requirements for RB Rail have been quite small up until this time, and we can debate about that a little bit later, why that is now. So Latvia has always had this situation where the financing was decided in the same year, whereas in Estonia and Lithuania the financing was decided in the previous year during budget discussions and allocations of the state budget. So it's kind of different. So in Estonia and Lithuania we haven't seen this kind of discussion, that is true. But of course, I must say the question of the size of the budget, I think, is something that we go through constantly with all of the governments or the ministries, the representative ministries, I should say, every year. So that is nothing special in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you followed the reaction of Latvian politicians about this your announcement. Have you heard what Latvian Prime Minister Evika Siliņa responded?
You mean the question about
9 million co-funding?
Yes. So
we can remind also
yes.
Our audience there will be quote on Latvian, and then I will translate it also.
Es nekādu šantāžu no Rail Baltica komandas nepieņemšu. Ekonomija ir jāatrod, un ir pilnīgi skaidrs uzstādījums, ka šīs izmaksas, kas iepriekš tika uzstādīts, ir jāsamazina vismaz par 20%.
So Evika Siliņa said that she will not accept any blackmail from RB Rail Baltica team. The cut of budget must be made. It is absolutely clear that this cost, which was previously announced, must be cut by at least 20%.
Yes, the blackmail quote is of course known and ominous within the project site. So I would say that from the Prime Minister's part, it seems she just reacted to this discussion as it was presented in the media, which is not the actual decision made by the Supervisory Board or the Management Board to withhold actual construction within Latvia. So just to explain, what we did was that because we entered 2025 with a budget that did not have state approval in terms of Latvia, based on previous Latvian decisions that we are not to incur costs if they are not validated, we made the decision to postpone as much costs within RB Rail's own envelope, which does not include construction, into further months. So this means we made a decision to wait and see and not incur some very specific costs regarding design review, for instance, supplier costs that we can extend into the next month. So I do reiterate that I think a lot of the hype regarding deadlines and ultimatums was created because of a misconception about the decisions that we actually made. Because I just want to finish that from the point of view of prudent management of a company, we are not to incur costs until we have validated budget for the costs. So we are in a sort of stopgap situation. So I think it was a right decision that we just postponed some of the costs as much as we could until we get a validated decision.
So you mentioned already that you communicate with the Ministry of Transport, but you don't have any communication with our Prime Minister, because you said it was reaction to media news.
Yes, I think it's part of the way that the communication setup is just made, that we answer to the relevant ministry within the country. So our communication always goes through the Ministry of Transport.
I'm just wondering if she was reacting to media news or maybe the information that minister gave her.
I can't comment on the information between the minister and the Prime Minister, but I'm just stating that, you know, obviously we just tried to make the right decision under these circumstances to postpone some of RB Rail's own costs, some supplier costs, as much as we could in this situation.
But these costs that Prime Minister said should be cut at least 20%. Is this a real goal?
At this point in time, I would say to cut 20% further from the budget of 25, which was already cut, and specifically in terms of Latvia by 27% already, would be very hard to achieve. So I do hope that all the budget discussion that we had in 2024 concerning the budget of 2025, where we already implemented measures to cut the budget, will be enough for this situation.
So you don't see now any sources of reducing the costs more?
It is possible if we don't have such tasks as currently we have. So if the question is there fat we can shave off? No. We have been doing this exercise of cost reduction already for some time. I think we started already for the 2024 budget to do it. And in 2024, we did it even further for the 2025 budget in cooperation with Supervisory Board and the relevant ministries. So I would say if our tasks remain as they are, there is nowhere really to go. Specifically, if the goal would be 20% of a state co-financing, then it would seem to me very, very hard to reach without throwing away some of the tasks. And I must remind you that the way the state financing works inside the company is that it is, how to say, multiplied by financing of the European Union. So, for instance, there are some aspects of the budget allocated by Latvia that are then just boosted by European co-financing to the level of 85%. So if we take away, and if, for instance, we're talking about horizontal activities, if we take away Latvia's part of 5% out of that 100, the whole 100% cannot be done because there's not co-financing for that 5% available. So if we're talking about a cost that would be, I don't know, 100 euros, because Latvia's co-financing of 5 euros is missing, we cannot incur these costs because that's the way the project has been set up.
Okay, if we talk about the costs, there was discussion on Latvian public TV, Kas notiek Latvijā show about this all Rail Baltica thing, and our Minister of Finances, Arvila Ašarādens, said if public ever find out about the costs of salaries of the highest paid employees of RB Rail, and there was also information about salaries of 5 RB Rail board members that is per month from 10,000 euros to 27,000 euros. Isn't it a good source of saving, you would say, to cut?
First of all, the public
salaries?
should know because this information is available on our website. specifically in terms of management board members, I think even the members are there for everyone to see what they get. In terms of employees, because of the rights that employees have, we cannot obviously put on our website a list with names and the salaries they make. So in our website we have a salary description with a range for that specific, let's say, task that is being done. About the size of some of the remuneration, and I must say, if we are thinking about larger salaries than is the average median inside the company, then there are just a few positions that are like this. And the reasoning for that is very simple. Rail Baltica is a project that requires technical expertise to actually undertake. And this technical expertise is not available in the Baltic states. All of the globe is searching for that expertise. So we are in competition with, for instance, Dubai and Qatar to get these people to work for us. And we cannot do it without this expertise. So it's very important for people to understand that when it comes to specific, let's say, I don't know, you mentioned some specific positions that have high salaries. The reason is because they are of a, let's say, international level that we cannot simply attain without paying such salaries.
So there is no plan for salary reductions? For management, or I don't know, maybe you have a proposal about yourself or something?
I'm in management board. I certainly would not propose to cut my own salary. When it comes to management board, I guess the real answer would be given by supervisory board, so I will not comment on that. In terms of the salaries of the company itself, the way that you manage expectations by, let's say, financiers would be that you look at the size and composition of the workforce, not that you go and discuss with each individual, would you take a pay cut, because, you know, the individuals just tend to leave in such cases, because we are paying salaries based on the market needs. I'm emphasizing that. So just to say what, and to come back to what I'm explaining, what we have done in 2024 for the budget of 2025, we have taken a look at our composition of the workforce and looked at what kind of positions do we need and what we don't need, basically headcount. And this is the way how to actually address budgeting issues, not that you would find a specific person because of a specific salary range and scapegoat them somehow.
But what is your response in general about this cost for this project and RV Rail?
I would say that in terms of the project itself, phase one is estimated now at 15.3 billion euros as approved by the governments in December of last year. Then the budgeting needs of the companies involved are relatively small. If we are not, how to say, if we are not financing the implementing part of the project, we cannot do the project. So I would equate it to a situation that, you know, and I do understand that what has happened is the discussion about the overall capex of the project, which has led to this, you know, reaction of let's look at salaries of specific people. I do understand that there's this tendency, but I just want to say that, you know, if you have a situation whereby a, I don't know, racing horse is not performing, then starving them is certainly not the right choice to increase any performance.
There was also one more scandal here in Latvia involving Eiropas dzelzceļa līnijas, the company responsible for implementing Rail Baltica project. Here in Latvia, there was extremely expensive car rental contracts. It was luxury vehicles and, for example, with luxury features such as ventilated front seats, heated multifunctional, leather-wrapped steering wheel, free-zone climate control, and such things. Why do such situations occur with project implementers? Do you have any answer?
About EDZL, I think EDZL can comment on that specific procurement. I can just say that when it comes to car rental or leasing, I do believe that our procurement foresaw something very basic. I don't remember actually what type of car won, but certainly it wasn't with leather seats.
Okay, if we speak of criticisms, does public opinion about this project matters to you at all? If we saw one survey that was public on your website, RB Rail website, and there was highlighted the project's importance for military mobility, but I didn't see this general opinion of public. Does they whether the public actually considers this project be necessary given its cost? Didn't you ask that?
We do have a public survey every year. I think this question that you're showing right now is also part of that survey. Regarding public opinion or public support, we do have the numbers, and this is a very important metric for the project, of course, because without public support, the project cannot continue. I would say that what has happened in 2024 specifically is a public discussion about the expense of the project actually. So meaning the scope of phase one, 15.3 billion euros, full scope, 23 billion euros. And I think what happened is that just the previous discussion on expense was not there in the public eye as it should have been. So. Basically, there was this knowledge of 5.7 billion euros, and we shot up to 23. So this is what has happened, and I do understand that in terms of the trustworthiness of the project, because of what happened in 2024 and the publication of these numbers, yes, we need to do a lot of work to increase the trustworthiness of the project once more. But I must say that it's very key that this can be achieved only if the political and implementing side of the project work in unison and agree that the project is necessary for its parameters.
But about this discussion, you said, was this, it is government responsibility, politicians, or who was responsible for what happened last year?
For the Kāpēc increase, I think that's another sort of, let's say, full universe of issues of what has happened, in fact, why the 5.7 billion wasn't adequate, and etc. But just to reiterate what I mean by the statement that the political level and project implementers need to work in unison, I think what the public really wants to hear is that based on the current understanding, knowledge of the project, meaning its costs, is the government and project implementers, are they ready to move forward with the project or not? If there is any sort of uncertainty regarding that, the public, of course, will not have trust in the project's actual capabilities. So I think that's the first thing to look on and to improve from the project side for sure, and from the political side as well. So I do appreciate all of the statements that have been made that the project is still necessary and relevant for the Baltic states. And I think this is still a position held by all governments, also the Latvian government. So what we need to do is just, in terms of public opinion, still remind that constantly and be open about what is the expense, how we intend to proceed with the project, how we intend to finance it, and what is its outlook.
Do you think this public opinion about Rail Baltica differs between Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia?
We have data that says that it differs. Yes, of course. I think one of the key issues that at least I saw in the public opinion surveys and media monitoring surveys was that when it comes to mentioning in the media of the project, then Latvia is 10 times ahead of Estonia and Lithuania, because it has become an internal issue to debate about the project in Latvia, much more so than in Estonia and Lithuania. Why that is? I don't know, maybe it's just a question of some drama and opposition, but I would guess that this is one of the reasons why also we see that in Latvia public opinion regarding the project has been reduced from 2023 until 2024 by somewhat. Yeah.
How to improve it?
I would say, just to reiterate, that step one, the governments and the project implementers must say that the project is relevant and necessary also, even though it costs this amount of money. That's the first step. And the second step is to bring back, let's say, the relevance of the project timeline and its financing. So we need to actually introduce to the public the plan on financing and how we intend to finish by 2030. So these are the things we need to do this year in order to improve the trust for the project from the public side.
There is also if we talk about politicians in Latvia, we have a lot of criticism of our Minister of Transport, Kaspar Briškens. Could this impact the project implementation in any way in Latvia? What do you think?
I think it's very important that the government itself acts in unison and actually can, make decisions in light of what the project needs.
Does it act in unison now, in your opinion?
I think there's a lot of debate in the Latvian government. I think the debate itself is healthy. As I said, this debate is necessary in any case, but it's just a question of the timing, that it has not really been done in 2024, but in 2025 that has caused a lot of tension, I believe. So debate itself, I think, is very, very healthy.
In Latvia, we also had this parliamentary investigative committee on Rail Baltica. Have you heard about its conclusions? What do you think about them? And was this job done? Was it important?
Yes, about the investigatory committee, I do think that the job was done very well. Things like that are obviously necessary in a democracy where there is parliamentary oversight, etc. So I'm really appreciative of all the work done and also of the conclusions. I think they are fairly accurate. Yes, they depict a lot of the decision-making process of the project up until when the committee was established. So what they have done is good, and I do believe that the conclusions are accurate. When it comes to the suggestions on the improvements, and I think they are sort of separate. There are conclusions and suggestions.
There are some recommendations also regarding RB Rail, such as instructing the Cabinet of Ministers to initiate amendments to the shareholder agreement, introducing a requirement that any project scope changes that exceeds 20 million euros must be approved by national government. What do you think about this recommendation?
I think if we have a budget approved for phase one, and currently as the decisions stand in their wording, I'm not really that sure that the budget part itself is approved. What is approved is the overall technical context of phase one. Then such a system could work, but it would be very essential that we would have a streamlined way of decision making. So for instance, if we do enter for 20 million euros budget increase the government debate, then such a debate should happen fairly quickly. If it's a question of shifting within the budget and we don't, because of shifting within the budget, but the budget doesn't get increased, don't enter government debate, I think the project could handle such a monitoring system for sure.
This committee final report also includes a diagram about project's governance model, which we will show on the screen. Do you think this project could be managed in simpler or more efficient way?
I think this kind of spider web that you're showing here, which has its origins, I think in whatever 2015 or 17, I don't even know, it's not a very good depiction of the project governance situation. So what it tries to show is that there's a corporate level, meaning who owns shares of RB Rail, which is this top part, and in the lower part, what is meant to be depicted is that RB Rails serves a certain functions within these projects, meaning that it does cater to the needs of construction, for instance, in terms of quality control. So this picture kind of takes apples and milk all together and mixes it up in one blender, and you don't get something that's good. So in terms of corporate governance as well as project management, I do not see a necessity to improve on anything. And furthermore, we already did the project management part. We improved it with the project management agreement being signed in February of 2024 that very accurately depicts what RB-Rail needs to do, what IBs need to do.
Okay, we are discussing many challenges, as you mentioned, also here in Latvia in implementing this project. Are the major issues seen only in Latvia, or the similar discussions we can see in Lithuania and Estonia as well?
Depends on what you mean by similar discussions. So in terms of budgeting, I think I already commented. So
okay, about implementing difficulties.
The challenges are different country by country. So because the geographical setup is different, the Kāpēc is different, the way that countries have proceeded to tender out the construction portfolios is different. So therefore, it's not really the same situation in each country. So we're not facing the same questions in every country. So,
but every country faces any kind of difficulties.
Every country faces difficulties, yes. But I'd really like to call them challenges. So okay. Yes. Terms of
here, situation in Latvia is not unique if we talk about challenges, as you want to.
No, I think what is happening that in Latvia there's this a lot of emphasis on, let's say, operational costs of the project. So we're looking at budgets of the companies, really emphasizing that. So that is something that currently in the other states has been done, but not in such a public manner. So it's kind of, that is different for sure. What is different also is that because of the way that Estonia and Lithuania and Latvia have differently tendered out the construction parts, you see that there is also differences in the challenges as well. So for instance, Latvia has a procurement done already for mainline construction contractor, but it's a framework agreement and works completely differently than the other agreements that we have in Estonia and Lithuania. So in Estonia you have agreements with just a fairly specific types of work, fairly specific kilometers when everything is already done and ready, and not a framework contract. So completely different approach, therefore completely different challenges.
I would like to talk about this different approach. If we can say here in Latvia, this primary focus has been on building stations, while in Lithuania priority was constructing the railway tracks. Why have such different approaches been here in those countries?
Well, this different approach should go back to the application of CEF1, as we call it. So somewhere in 2014, already such kind of approach was decided, because that's where you will find the European money for these parts of the project. So it's a while back when these decisions were made. So whatever I comment is kind of in hindsight. I would say that the states, when they apply for funding to the European Union, they have the decision-making power to choose what is ready, what is mature enough to get that funding. And so it happened that in Latvia, it seems that the maturest part was the main stations, not mainline construction. And in Estonia, Lithuania, there we actually find also key differences. Estonia opted for constructing overpasses and viaducts before mainline, and Lithuania was the one going for the mainline for the first financing from the European Union side. So I guess the reasons were kind of connected to the maturity of these parts of the project.
And in your opinion, which approach was more successful?
I guess we will have to see, because the project is not completed yet. Today I feel that all parts of the project are necessary. Also Riga Central Station and the station at the airport, they are an integral part of the project, that is for sure. So if the question is, should we or should we not have done it at all, then sure, this should have been done in any case. So I wouldn't really say that it was a mistake. I would say that the question is that evidently the central stations were in their, let's say, design maturity more there than in the other states.
Yes, we every day we can see here in Riga this bridge abandonment on Daugava River, which is currently unused. Can you name, I don't know, such souvenirs or monuments in other countries? For example, Lithuania, Estonia.
Well, today, if you would think about the context that no train is running, then nothing's being used. So based on that, I think everything is not used until there is a train operating. So for instance, in Estonia, we do have viaducts and ecoducts that are built before there is a train embankment. So the question is the same. They exist, but they exist in the context of a timeline that is more bigger.
So you think we will have this bridge?
The bridge over Daugava?
Yeah.
I think in terms of the financing decision, that's up to the Latvian state to decide, yes. So I would say it's more a question of financing availability by what date and time.
I'd like to ask about also railway tracks. So we see this for Lithuania in the first stage, they decided to create this dual track to Panevėžys. Here in Latvia we have only single tracks. How it is that Lithuania can afford double tracks and Latvia and Estonia cannot?
The scope composition of phase one is subject to the state's decision. So I would just start from that the Lithuanian state decided that they would like to see phase one with a double track up until Panevėžys. So it's just a decision that Latvia and Estonia did not make in order to save costs on that second track. So it's a decision that Lithuania could have made, but they didn't. But this decision now increased their Kāpēc. So that's one thing. The second thing I think you want to ask is, does it make sense for there to be a double track in Lithuania, but no double track in Latvia and Estonia? Based on traffic demand modeling, I would say that it is possible for also Lithuania to decide to have a single track without having much of a constraint on the functioning of the railway in its first phase, but there would be a constraint because there is no second track, right? So attractiveness of the service would suffer because trains cannot pass each other. So there would be an effect, but it wouldn't be, let's say, overly dramatic. And this is the reason also why Latvia and Estonia have decided that it's okay not to have the second track because we still can function fairly well with just a single track.
We can function, but it would be better if we would have this two railway tracks.
The double track would mean that, let's say, the throughput of the railway would be significantly larger. So if you can think about what to take in Latvia.
So if we talk about efficiency of this project, so
yeah.
It would be better to decide to have this two tracks?
I think there's a bridge in Salaskriva I constantly cross, right? And it's currently with a lighting system and only one single track can cross at a time, and there is a huge traffic jam all the time. So that's basically the question that comes up if you have a single track railway. If you have enough passing loops, you can, how to say, make it so that this impact on the speed of traveling is fairly reduced, and this is what we are doing. But it doesn't mean that it's as quick as with double track.
But now in the project we have enough, this passing loops,
yes.
I would say.
Yes. So when it comes to the benefits of the project with a single track composition, then it's still fairly beneficial. We have done a CBA, so cost benefit analysis, for also this phase one with the single track, and it's still very much positive. So I would say that it does not have an immediate impact on the functionality of the railway. So it's just that the train service for high-speed rail will not be maybe just as quick, because it needs to slow down a bit because there are these passing loops, so it cannot go full throttle.
But you would say that in future, I don't know which year, we have to build two tracks in every state?
Double track should be a requirement of the project. That's how the funding has been sought from the European Union. So there's always this caveat that the whole totality of the project is with phase 2. So at some point in time, there should be a second track.
If we mentioned all the mentioned difficulties of or challenges, or you believe we will have this double track?
The second track?
Yeah.
I think it's subject to financing. Just as phase 1, financing needs to be sought, and the pace of financing will dictate the timeline. So it will be up to, I would say, the financing provided by European Union post-2030, and also the readiness of the states to finance the second track.
We like, as media, we like to talk about deadlines. What would you say will be deadline for this final decision on tracks? About if we have this double track. Yeah.
So phase 2 itself, first of all, there's no deadline to decide on the timeline of phase 2. Such a deadline does not exist. So, but the timeline of phase 2 itself, I would guess today it's too early to say something out loud, because this is still to be debated with the governments on what is their view about phase 2 in general.
In terms of military mobility, this single track railway is disadvantage?
I would not say it like that, because from a point of view of freight, yes, if there is a prioritized freight, it can always pass. But obviously, if you have, let's say, the priority of freight as it is, the freight train will stop somewhere to allow the passing of a high-speed passenger train, because the passenger train is faster. So therefore, the freight, let's say, the travel times are not as competitive as such in terms of, market realization. But I think regarding military mobility, it's not a big impact as such. It can still be used fairly effectively versus a situation where we don't have such a fast railway at all.
But comparing with double track railway?
In terms of military mobility, yes, slightly faster for sure. But the key essence would be that we can achieve all the military mobility goals with a single-track railway as well.
So if I don't have any deadline, as you mentioned, so there is no how long it can take for Latvia to commit to build double tracks?
I think the decision about the second track or second phase in Latvia is more about integration of Riga than the double track, because if you know the scope of the project, then it foresees the integration of Riga with new European gauge railway, and which will be, let's say, from the financing perspective, a lot more bigger than the second track in the whole of Latvia. So when it comes to phase 2, I'm pretty sure that all the emphasis in Latvia will be about that subject. And the decision about whether or not to put a second track on the main line is something that will be made then after it is evident that Riga can be integrated with the main line.
Okay, construction is one thing. The other thing is trains also. Here in Latvia we faced difficulties with our passenger trains. Do you have any concerns about purchase of sustainable trains for Rail Baltica Railway?
No concerns as such. I think what we are looking at today is that because of the 2030 deadline of operational readiness, if we want to purchase new trains, completely new trains, full set, we should be putting up a procurement within this year. So let's say conveniently in summer, to make sure that these trains exist by 2030. So I would say from a point of view of concern, the only question is the timeline of managing these procurements.
The best way to manage this question would be for Baltic states to do it together, or in every state?
With a joint purchase, you can increase the number of the trains that you actually purchase together, and if you purchase more, you should have a reduction of the cost per unit. So obviously, yes, it makes sense to purchase together. So,
and if we look at discussions between Baltic states on this project, what do you think? We can come to agreement about purchasing together?
Of the trains, you
Yeah.
mean? Yes. I think today it's more of a question that the financing sides needs to be very clear to the relevant ministries of transport handling it. Because what I'm talking about right now is a system of making sure that the trains are there in 2030, whereby the states purchase the trains before there is any tender to find the operator, which is kind of exotic. Usually you do the tender to find the operator with the train. So the operator comes with the train. So we're asking the governments to actually purchase the trains and then rent them out to the operator, just to make sure there are new trains by 2030. Because if we would do the operator search today, we do have the risk that it would not be as cost effective. Better to buy the trains separately. So I would say that is the reason why currently it takes a little bit more time to make a decision on purchasing trains at all as such. And then the question about joint purchasing is just another issue like on the side of this question.
But we don't have a lot of time to make
We don't have a lot of time,
decision.
yes. So as I'm saying, best would be to put up procurement within this year, even in summer, to find these trains. So the procurement itself, I would say, is not that really hard to put up, but it's a question of making the decision on whether or not to do it jointly.
Another concern is about infrastructure management. So how it will be handled? All Baltic states together, or every state will be responsible for their railway?
I would say from my side there is no concern, because we do have ample time to actually have this setup ready. So as far as, let's say, from the legal side, if we're thinking about the 2030 target, there needs to be in place a system whereby every operator can see what I need to pay to access that railway 1.5 years or 2 years before the railway is actually made publicly available. So we do have time up until 2027 to still discuss and agree. So that's one aspect. So there is no worry actually at all. What's happening now is that three infrastructure managers, who are the implementing bodies of the countries, are cooperating and jointly making documents in order to be ready for that role of infrastructure manager. And these documents, as they are currently devised, do foresee that in some aspects there will be a coordinated approach, meaning that for any, let's say, freight operator, if they want to access from Poland up until Muuga harbor in Tallinn, they just have one interface. They don't need to talk to three separate entities to gain access to that track with separate pricing system, etc. So it will just look like it's the same infrastructure manager, while legally there can be three infrastructure managers who have a cooperation agreement. Same goes for any maintenance costs.
So you would advise to do it together to handle this infrastructure?
Obviously, yes, because in order to make it competitive versus road transport, for instance, it must be seamless. Otherwise, it's very tedious to agree on access to the railway. About
this competitiveness, how much will the tickets cost? Can you tell something now? Won't it be cheaper to take bus, for example, instead of Rail Baltica railway?
I don't have the ticket price to tell you like
sure,
that.
We don't have
for sure. Yes.
train and railways,
yes.
But if we think about the future.
I do expect that the train ticket would be more expensive than the bus, but the reason for that is because it's twice as fast and dare I say even safer. So there's within the context of the cost-benefit analysis, the way how it's done is that you take the actual service, you find out how competitive it is by looking at its attractiveness versus other modes of transport. So one of the ways is also that, okay, the price per person may be higher, but it's still attractive because of the other, let's say, positive things it brings, like speed. So I would say that when we are comparing to buses, I would estimate it will be more expensive, but then again, you get there twice as fast.
Advantages.
Yes.
If we talk about 2030 as the year project should be completed, it is now entirely certain that it will be not possible in 2030, or you still have this year?
The goal of 2030 remains, for sure. This is a goal by the government and the European Union because of, fairly specifically, there's a regulation from the European Union to make sure that this railway exists by 2030. It's a legal obligation. So currently there's no talk of extending any deadline, and we hope to achieve it. There are many challenges on the road because we're not there yet. But we must have a target that is challenging. If it's not challenging, it's too relaxing.
Challenging but realistic?
I think under certain circumstances it could be attained. It's the question that some of the circumstances are not fully there yet. So in terms of, for instance, financing availability, there is not 100% certainty that, let's say, financing will be there by that year when we actually need it to pay to the construction contractors. So without this financing certainty, obviously 2030 also is a target up until then.
But you are optimistic. If you think about 2030, you think you will be able to take train from Riga to Tallinn, this Rail Baltica, and be fast?
I think we have to think like that to make sure that this railway project will succeed. So yes, I'm fairly optimistic that we will have a service running in 2030.
Are there a lot of risks?
Yes.
Not to fulfill this?
There are a lot of risks not to fulfill this target. One is financing, as I mentioned. One is readiness of the market to actually absorb this kind of volume of work by the time needed. So yes, there are obvious risks to this timeline.
And this finance is the main risk?
I would say the financing is the main risk, but of course the readiness of the market to actually construct in such a manner this fast is sort of on the second place of the risk envelope. And
still, with all those risks in mind, you think that 2030 is?
We have a technical schedule that foresees that it is attainable. But the question is that although this technical schedule exists, it does take into account acceleration measures. It does take into account fairly optimal situations regarding all the construction works, regarding how many shifts there are in a day for these construction works to take place. It's fairly optimistic about the settling of the embankment, like physical settlement before start of operations, etc. So the schedule is very, very sporty, I would say.
Very sporty. Okay, so we will see the discussions in government and by discussions but by our politician, and we also will see how is this constructing work is doing. And thank you for this interview. And I hope we will meet you another time and discuss another issues about Rail Baltica. Paldies jums, ka skatījāties, un tikšanos pēc nedēļas.